Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of Social Work Radio with me, your host Vince Piggott. I feel like I should be saying Social Work TV or Social Work Video this week, given I'm coming at you through the power of YouTube and other video streaming platforms, as well as your audio podcasting platform of choice. Once again, and always, we are joined by our co-host, Tilly Baden. Tilly, my friend, how the devil are you? How have things been since you were last aboard the good ship SWR?
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here in person. We are at our writers' retreat, our summer catch-up. Yes, and it's great to actually be able to do a podcast face-to-face. Yeah. It's good to see you again. So it was a bit of a crazy night last night, though. I'm sorry. We have to start off with an apology because...
apology to listeners and visitors who weren't even here. Sounds like quite a Catholic thing to be doing. I mean, it certainly works for me. I'm certainly used to doing this every Sunday morning. But, welcome to my world.
Well, we were very loud last night, Vince, and you were trying to go to bed. And the other people that were in the retreat, we were singing Defying Gravity very late last night.
And you were making me defy sleep, unwittingly. Fair enough. A good time was had by all.
It was indeed, very much so. So, what are we talking about this week then?
I was keen just to deconstruct the behaviour of three social workers when they get together. I was keen to do analysis. I've made notes about disclosures made, things said, and I've cross-referenced that against the evidence available to me. Essentially, last night was an ethnographic study of social workers in the wild. But, that isn't the topic today. I'd like it to be. The topic today is about social work reviews. What do your clients really think about you, would be the question. I mean, it could have been, what does Vince really think about you? I know what you guys think about me because you were drunk and telling me. No, you weren't drunk. You were. You'd had a tipple. Let's rephrase it that way.
Tiny
tipple.
Tiny tipple.
This is the thing, though, isn't it? Like, it's funny in social work. We'll discuss this slightly before getting to the topic. We almost feel there's a sense of guilt in letting our hair down. Do you get that?
Oh, yes.
It's weird, isn't it?
It is weird.
Because, having a drink on a weekend, or even every night if you want to, is perfectly legal. It's not, maybe not the suggested course of action, and certainly not one I condone or get involved in, but it's normalised. But because we work in a hypersensitive environment within social work, let's be blunt, we see the ravages of alcohol. Yeah. We see the ravages of, drugs are illegal, but we see the ravages of behaviours when taken to excess. And because we assess other people on that basis, we can kind of be a bit guilty about admitting it ourselves. But it's bizarre, isn't it, that we feel that pressure on us, don't we?
We do. Well, that's the first thing that I said to you this morning, was I came in and had to apologise for drunken antics.
And I said you've nothing to apologise for.
No, that's true.
There we go. There's our confessional out of the way. Let's move on with this week's podcast then. Our topic is, what do your clients really think about you? And as always, listeners, viewers, I'll call them listeners. I think the majority of people will probably still be, coming at most people through their ears rather than their eyes at this occasion, I think. But both, I suppose, Could be. What other senses could we titillate? I suppose if we did an in-person, we could titillate people's, touch. And
I thought you were going to say taste.
And smell, and they couldn't taste as good. Maybe they could. The air would be palpable with the taste of, good quality podcasting. What would our
as long as that's the only taste going on.
What would our podcast taste like? If our podcast was a flavour, what would it be? Would it be the subtle comfort of vanilla?
No,
would it be the dark exotic chocolate, or would it be the raspberry ripple? Vanilla with a heart of red goodness veining through it.
No, I think something fruity, something
like a tutti frutti.
Tutti frutti.
I'm not a tutti frutti man. I'd be more of a. If I was going to pick let's get an ice cream. What ice cream flavour would you be? Not the podcast, and then we'll make it, because you can sometimes get two scoops, can't you? Like when I go to an ice cream parlour, I'll be like, I'd have usually a scoop of rum and raisin is a personal favourite of mine,
nice.
And maybe mix that with a scoop of, I like a honeycomb crisp.
Oh, nice.
So what would you be if you were? That'd be my. I'm not sure I would be that, but that'd be my. If you were an ice cream flavour, what would you be and why? You only get one scoop, though. And we'll be a scoop each, and then we'll serve that up in one of those small cups. Small. What do you call it? It's not a cone, because I don't like a cone. I like a cup.
Do you?
The problem with a cone is it gets down your hand and you're having to bite the bottom, and you're sucking it out the bottom like you're taking a beer bong, like an ice cream bong.
Okay.
Shoot, ice cream flavour, go.
My favourite ice cream flavour.
No, it's what you want.
No, I'm just going to go with my favourite ice cream.
Wow.
Mixed berry.
Mixed berry. And if you were to attribute your personal qualities as a social worker and a human being to a mixed berry, what's a mixed up fruit about you?
I don't know. It's just my favourite flavour.
You're a mixed up fruit.
Mixed up fruit.
That's what you are.
I've got Fruit Loops.
You're a mixed up fruit.
Loop.
And there probably is wonky fruit in that as well, because you're a mixed up wonky fruit.
Oh, thanks. But I feel really insulted.
But you're the one who chose this ice cream.
Yeah, but you've made it weird.
You're the one that chose it. So if you don't interpret it for yourself, other people will interpret it for you.
Okay, right. Can we just move on?
You mixed. Well, I haven't picked my ice cream now, have I?
You already said rum and raisin.
That's my favourite, but that's not what it would be.
Okay, what would you be?
This is where you've got it wrong. You haven't thought about this like I have. I go around my time. I go about my average day cutting about thinking, what ice cream would I be?
That's like a BuzzFeed quiz.
Exactly.
like what kitchen utensil am I going to pick?
And that's why I write stuff for the website, like the top 10. So this could be now. Listeners could be checking out mysocialworknews.com next week, and it could be the top 5 ice creams that represent your skills as a person-centered social worker.
I'd love to see that.
This is the kind of thing. This is the kind of thing we do. This is what we do. I'd be a rocky road.
A rocky road.
That's what I'd be, because I'm difficult for you to manage, like rocks on a road. You never know what you're going to get. You might have, what's this? Is that a
marshmallow?
Is that a marshmallow?
Glacé cherry?
Is that a glacé cherry? Oh, someone's thrown a raisin in there.
Oh.
What is this? The texture's a bit rough but smooth, melts in your mouth, but sometimes you might get a cornflake jar in your gum.
Oh, God.
So I am. I'm a rocky road. And you like it or not.
Well, that actually suits your personality just perfectly. So
a rocky road. Let's rock on with this podcast.
Let's move on swiftly.
Swiftly. I could have talked about ice cream.
I know you could.
We're not moving on for your benefit. We're not moving on for my benefit. We're moving on for yours.
Okay, that's
I could have kept on that rocky road.
You could
taken
have.
it to its bitter end.
Yeah.
Which left you on the side with the flat.
And
hoping for assistance.
I think this is when our listeners turn off, because
people want more. This is what people want.
I really don't think it is.
I promise you, there are people out there screaming out for social. There are people out there ice screaming out.
Oh no! Vince!
There are people out there ice screaming out for Rocky Road themed social work content, and you're blocking it.
I am blocking it because I think we are off topic. Come on.
This is the real quiz. This is the real show. It was just with bamboos. People said we were going to talk about what clients really think about you, but the actual podcast is ice cream flavours.
Okay.
No, we are going to move on. What do your clients really think about you? So, on this week's show, we are discussing 2 articles that we've had on the website. One from one of our columnists, Maisie McDonald. She wrote an article which is entitled, "I'm a social worker and assess people for a living, but thank God nobody's assessing me." Certainly not assessing them from the ice cream framework. I could coin that. That could be a new thing. Signs of safety, parent assess, the ice cream framework.
I mean, it sounds quite attractive to clients, I'm sure.
You'd be a waffle cone.
I'm mortally offended now.
You're a waffle. That's exactly what a waffle cone would say. That's what
you're
a waffle cone.
You're the one that's waffling. Come on.
You're the waffle cone because you're the recipient of my waffle. Right.
Oh, give me strength.
And the other piece that was covered was 10 brutally honest things your social work clients would say about you if they could write reviews. So we're going to cover this and encapsulate it within the overall topic of what do your clients really think about you. So I'm going to go over Maisie's story and just have a quick sort of review of that, see what we think. So Maisie's story was, "I'm a social worker and assess people for a living, but thank God nobody's assessing me." And the general vibe of Maisie's piece was, she spent her entire career thus far doing assessments. From that, I don't know a job that. I mean, I kind of know, but I don't know a job exactly. But look, I think she's currently working in fostering and adoption, because a lot of the assessments she talks about are like Form Fs, adoption, and considering potential foster carers, and also doing SGO assessments, considering potential special guardians. And she also talks about, she must have worked in safeguarding before, and I think she has, because she's discussed that in previous pieces. So basically, she said, I've done maybe hundreds, if not thousands, of assessments. But she fears what it would feel like them being done to her. And she kind of lists what it goes through. I found this quite, kind of brutal, actually, when you see exactly what when she explains what people go through. She says, I need to see around people's homes. I need to interview people that they put forward as referees. That would be in terms of, a foster and adoption assessment. Take a look at bank statements. Ask people about every aspect of their childhood, their love lives, their work history, how they did at school. She needs to see people's criminal records, notes from the GP. She has to ask them to recount the worst parts of their lives. And then, after hearing what they tell me and cross-referencing against the other evidence I have, put my own spin on things and type it onto an assessment report that will sit on their file forever. Now, I do that on a daily basis, and that's what I do. I assess. I just working as an independent social worker, that's what I singularly do. And it's not lost on me that that's intensive, but I always, with my therapeutic background and my counselling training, and I'm very person-centred, I always come at it from a sense of empathy. But when you see somebody setting out how difficult it is to do that as the assessor, not the person being assessed, it kind of shines a stark light on it, really. And, Maisie's view is that she wouldn't like that being done to her. And we did a podcast not that long ago, didn't we? Where we assessed one another.
We did.
I did a rudimentary common assessment framework on you, and you didn't like it, did you?
I did not. And I don't know if that was just because it was roleplay, which is not my favourite topic. But no, it is uncomfortable. We have to talk about such intimate things with the people that we're supporting. It's very intrusive and uncomfortable. And I think we've always got to remember that as social workers, because we expect people just to tell us, and sometimes on that first visit you're still trying to get a huge amount of information, and you're just a stranger. You just walked in their house. So it's an incredible privilege, I think, to be in that position, but very hard to put yourself sometimes in that person's shoes.
Now, we might get that, and I genuinely believe that we do. I can certainly speak for my own practice and what I'm aware of yours. I think we do work in that style. Is every social worker mindful of the power and gravitas of assessments and needing to not just rattle through it? It's not just a perfunctory duty, but this is someone's life. Do you think that is embedded as much as it should be within our practice?
I'd like to say I hope so, but I'm not sure. Certainly when I'm delivering training, one of the first things that we talk about is human rights and the breach of Article 8, right to your private and family life. Yeah. That's to offset that duty to protect someone's private and family life, to then assess them. Mm-hmm. There has to be really significant reason to do that. It's got to be justified, and you've got to do that very sensitively. And I think when you put it into that context of a human rights setting, that kind of brings it home that we're agents of the state, effectively. We're part of Rishi's, well, certainly for our UK listeners, Rishi Sunak's people that go out and do this state work.
We always have been, whether it's Rishi Sunak or whether it's whoever it is, and wherever our listeners are coming from. Social workers, as much as we dislike the idea, if we don't agree with a particular government, we're an extension of the arm of the government. We're there to enact legislation as part of the welfare state, which is, as the name suggests, the state.
Yep.
And it can be difficult at times, but I think one of the things that frustrates me, there's many things that frustrate me, such as that's exactly what a rocky road kind of person would say.
Of course it is.
There are many things that frustrate me, but perhaps one of the ones that is recurring is the clients that I work with having never been sat down before and properly read their rights and sort of gone through. Well, you do know this is a child in need process. You can say no. You don't have to open your door. you can be honest, you can explain this, you can sort of push back if you want to. This is what an assessment is. And reading like, a 101 on assessments, well, do you know what an assessment is? Do you know what a social worker does? Do you know what this is going to happen? Do you know what a child protection review is? Do you know what a child protection plan is? Do you know what an independent review officer is? I don't get this now in independent work because, everybody that I work with is an independent social worker. The local authorities that I work with and instruct me and solicitors have been universally brilliant across the board. I'm very, very grateful for the high quality skilled people that I work with and working in a more specialised field now. But certainly when I was still doing frontline social work as a manager, assistant manager, senior social worker, whatever role that I've fulfilled over the past decade, time and time again I would come in as a new social worker and sit with a mum or a dad or the children, and they really wouldn't have a clue what was being done to them. They knew something was being done to them, and they were almost like a leaf on a stream being carried along unwillingly. And I used to think it was just so very, very wrong. Wrong on two fronts. Wrong on the fact that this person wasn't being dealt with as a human being and given the fundamental human rights and being explained. Well, you've got a right to a private family life. You can't just have to fling open your door and let anybody in. But secondly, by not establishing that rapport and congruence with the people you support, it makes everything so much harder.
It does.
Because you're asking people questions, but they don't know why. One of the worst things that I ever encountered along that line was I was working with a young mother, a very vulnerable young mother. She had mental health issues. She'd gone through trauma and she lacked some capacity in certain areas, but she was a good person. She just needed help. She just needed a bit of support. And I was chatting to her and she'd mentioned that a social worker would come out and started asking her. She hadn't seen a social worker for ages because the children were out of her care. And she mentioned that a social worker had come out to see her and had started asking her questions about her childhood, checked what her eye colour was and checked if she had any medical history. And she said, I don't know why, he just suddenly came out. I hadn't seen him for months and he came out one day and just started asking me these questions. Do you know what those questions would be for?
I can guess.
Those questions...
Adoption.
Those questions are adoption questions. They're part of a child's permanence report. So those are questions that are necessary for a CPR. And I just thought that practice is absolutely abhorrent.
That's appalling.
The fact that you wouldn't visit a mother for months and months and months while the children were in care. You would go out of the blue when you realised you had to get this information because you had a deadline coming. You would sit down with this mother, not explain that, by the way, I'm asking you these questions because we're putting your children forward for adoption. And you would sit and you would ask this mum specific questions and she wouldn't have a clue. And I thought just how... honestly...
It's giving me chills.
Yeah.
It's giving me chills.
I felt like crying when I heard that because it was just such an abhorrent thing to do. I can't describe it in any other way. It was an abhorrent thing to do, such an underhand and devious thing to do, to go and speak to someone because it only served you and to seek questions for your paperwork and not have the common decency to say, well, you know what we're doing, you know why I'm asking these questions. And I thought, it's disgusting practice. Luckily, that story appears as if it has ended okay in the end. And that was, this was a long time ago I'm talking about, but it's just things like that where we don't engage. And, no wonder sometimes social workers get a bad rep. No wonder. Because one social worker has to do that once.
Yeah.
And then if the solicitor finds out about it, if a barrister finds out about it, if a parent leaves a review about it, then of course everyone's going to think, well, if social workers do that, is that what they're taught to do? Is that the norm? So, it is very, very difficult if we don't accept that. Let's talk about reviews then. A bit more of a light-hearted. Hopefully this will... I've given you chills and see if I can give you thrills.
Wild ride, as always.
Yes, it's a rocky road. So the main sort of thrust of today's podcast, guys, is just based around this article on mysocialworknews.com, which is 10 brutally honest things your social work clients would say about you if they could write reviews. So I'll read out some of these, because I think they're hilarious.
Of course.
Check it out. These are brilliant. Poker face expert, 5 stars. What's a weekend? Psychic or social worker? My social worker must have a side gig as a psychic. Master of resourcefulness. The ultimate scapegoat. My social worker, the unsung hero, absorbs all of my frustrations without batting an eyelid. I've blamed him for the weather, traffic, losing paperwork, forgetting meetings, my lost keys, and even my milk going off. Yet there he is, patient and understanding, helping me redirect my anger into something constructive, or even just let me vent it towards him. So guys, if you want to check out mysocialworknews.com, have a look. 10 brutally honest things your social work clients would say about you if they could write reviews. It's hilarious if I do say so myself, and I do say so myself.
So modest, aren't you?
Right, on a serious note, should client feedback be sought more often and more formally, or should it even be a given? Every time we finish a piece of work, finish an assessment, should there be a sit down with the client, score me out of 10, shoot?
I mean, maybe not scoring out of 10, but definitely we need to be sort of seeking more client feedback. We really struggle with this as social workers, and I think it's partly because we're in such a powerful position, and we don't like to admit that because it's an uncomfortable truth, but as agents of the state, we're often doing something too because there's a statutory reason why we have to. And if people don't have a choice about why they have a social worker in their life, then it's a really difficult position for them to then give honest feedback. I mean, some people do give brutally honest feedback, and that's helpful and healthy in a way, but otherwise people, I don't think, would want to necessarily share what they truly thought because they'd be frightened that it could come back and impact on them, especially if you're looking at like child protection, because your record never goes away, and if they get a re-referral, well, that's going to be on your file, and if you've been slagging off the social worker, there's going to be that fear, isn't there? So yeah, it is something that we need to do more of, but I think it's very difficult to get a true representation about what people feel about us.
Yeah, you're correct. It has to be a cultural change. I mean, personally, I think it should be done as a matter of course in every single person we engage with. I think it for me, coming from a counselling background, having done my counselling training, and trying where I can ethically and to the best of my abilities embed that into my practice with people, and I found it incredibly useful. It's certainly, I think probably the best thing I ever did in terms of bringing on my abilities as a social worker was doing my counselling course. In counselling, you contract at the beginning and the end. And we quite often see it if we work with clients who've had CBT at the start. We'll score them out of 10 in terms of the scale, in terms of your anxiety. At the end, they'll have a closure. I think that would be brilliant to do in social work every time. Where do you, start, you can just imagine yourself sitting down with the client, the first initial assessment meeting. Okay, these are what I think the concerns are. How would you score yourself up? Like in child protection, we do it within the standards of safety.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself right now? Where do you want to be? How can we write? Okay, you see yourself as a 4. I might see you as a 2, but you see yourself as a 4. Okay, let's have a chat with 3. So immediately you've got some congruence there because you're saying, well, you see yourself a bit better. I get that.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't criticise the client for that. You would say, well, I get why you see yourself a better because you're the expert of your own life. Of course, you're going to see yourself better because when we see a client, we see what we know of them. When someone sees themselves, of course we do. Exactly. We only see the extent. We only see the worst because when you get a referral, what is the referral? The worst thing you can say about somebody. Yeah. This person's done that. It doesn't tell you about all the good things they've done. It just tells you about the police call out. God. So I think we do that at the start and we do it at the end. We even do it in a midway review. And I think giving people that power is incredibly important. But you have to have a cultural change. Not only that we embed this as an aspect of our practice, but, and this is key, we move away from a blame culture because social workers will not like to hear that.
No.
Social workers won't like to, even if there's nothing they can do, bad news is difficult to hear, of course it is. Everybody finds criticism difficult to hear. If you can embed that in your practice and you can have your social workers and clients knowing that, no, you're not sharing bad news with me, you're just sharing honest news with me. And then you get people with you on the journey. Not only that, but you improve practice as well, because if we know what we're doing wrong, then we can do better. If we know what we're doing well, we can do more of. The other really important thing that this would do as well is it would give us a wider scope of views. Right now, we get polarised views in social work. We get the very best stories, which is, a client who's had an exceptional experience, a young person who's done a bit of direct work, letter to the judge or something, however it might be expressed. And that's always held up. Everyone gets an email. You always see it, oh, brilliant. Susan's got a good bit of feedback. Terry's been told he's a brilliant social worker, and rightly so. We do need to know more of that. And then you get the extremes of the other end, which you get formal complaints via the ombudsman or nasty comments on Facebook or Twitter. or God forbid, I've seen sometimes posters of social workers posted around towns, she stole my kids, he stole my kids, and so on. You see videos on YouTube and all sorts. You get polarised views. Now, neither of those are right.
No.
So I think what we tend to do when we get polarised reviews in social work like we do, we cling tightly to the positive ones and say, brilliant, we might even only have 3 examples, but let's all, like a little ember of a fire, let's gather around these positive reviews and gain what heat we can off it. And the negative reviews we dismissed.
Yeah.
But for me, I think you have to take them all evenly.
Yeah.
Fair enough, we might not agree with people having negative views, and they might be expressing it in a very hateful way, but there's a truth behind that. It may not be our truth, but it's their truth.
Yes.
It's their perception of truth, and why do they feel that way? What was explained? Maybe there's nothing you can do about it, of course. If my kids were lost from my care, I would very likely be very angry, and there isn't much I could do about that either. I might vent like that there, but for the grace of God, go I. But because we allow reviews to be at the behest of clients, we don't get a fair spread.
No, we don't.
And we need a fair spread, would be my argument. How would you feel if we were all reviewed publicly then? Because it's all well and good us saying, right, okay, which is what councils would do. We know that councils wouldn't do it publicly, but we would say the best system is you go out, you have a sheet at the start, like I've said, you have one in the middle, one at the end, and the council uses that for our own purposes and own development. What if it was like Yelp? Or Google Maps, or Glassdoor, or Rate My Academic, whatever that website is, and or Hot or Not. There used to be a website called Hot or Not when I was a young man, and you go and you would give people a rating out of, 10. You
Love
hot or not.
that you know about this.
That was like 2003. That was like before Facebook. Hot or Not. I wonder if it still exists. Don't go on it, listeners, because sometimes these websites are like they've been bought by someone, and there could be something.
You could be recommending something.
I'm not. I'm actively saying, be careful. If you Google and look at that, don't do it around kids.
Or use your work laptop. Don't do that.
No, don't use your work laptop.
No, that's what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, why don't you use your work laptop so your wife doesn't find out? Good idea.
But your IT department will know, and so will your HR.
That's a good podcast question, actually. That would be a good topic for a podcast. Would you rather, and we fire up a bit of information, would you rather your manager found out about this or your partner? What would you rather? I think a manager would be more likely to keep secrets about certain things.
Depends on the manager, but yes.
I've known managers cover up affairs.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, this has taken a different turn.
Not mine.
Not yours, no.
Well,
my manager said
let me tell you about what a lovely lady that my last manager, Julie, was. I told her about my multiple affairs, and she just kept it mum. She said, well, Vince, as long as your work doesn't slip, you can do what you like. If anything, it appears to be motivating you. You're certainly in the office later.
You're happier.
I am.
Less stressed, happier.
That's true. You came with the bumps today. You must be enthusiastic for work.
Positively glowing.
I'm enthusiastic for the receptionist.
Okay.
What
were we even talking about?
I don't know, I was just getting excited. If we were all reviewed publicly, how would you feel about that? There was a public record of everything you'd ever done, including your affairs with colleagues.
No affairs, thank you very much. Stop it. I can kick you
Not
under the
affair,
table.
just relationships, including your relationships with colleagues. But nobody but your manager knew about, and the colleague who was giving you a 5-star review. Lovely night had.
Public. Stop it. This is what I have to put up with.
This is what we do.
This is what we do, and it's annoying.
But is it annoying?
Because
you get 4 stars. You get 4 stars that. For being obtuse on the date, you would get 4 stars, and you'd lose a star for that.
And you'd be...
I say she's all right, she's nice, but a bit too cheeky. Talks back too much. Not as supportive as I would want.
And what would we say about you?
Lovely man.
Makes people uncomfortable.
Funny.
Right.
Disarmingly candid.
Are you quite done?
Interrupts a lot.
Very much so.
Should we be reviewed publicly by our clients?
Should we be removed? But well, I mean, it does happen, doesn't it? I mean, there's Slate Your Social Workers and Name and Shame Your Social Worker sites out there, and I'm sure people do. They post it all over social media, so I think that kind of happens certainly when people have a bad experience. Freedom of speech, as much as it can be uncomfortable, I believe that people should be able to. There should be no censorship. I think that's a core value. I mean, don't get me wrong, you have to have consequences for your actions, and if you do something threatening or do something illegal, then you need to have consequences. But I don't think that people should be censored and people can say what they like.
I think there is a great divide in this depending upon what field of social work you work in. Mm-hmm. Child protection social work is a field that we 9 times out of 10 are involved with families who didn't seek that support themselves. They may be welcome of it eventually, but it's very, very different. So, you know, let's say that I am reviewing a film, you know, so I've got an option of a film to review, and I intentionally went to see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. And because I chose to see that, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10.
Quite high.
Or, yeah, it was good. It was a good. I like Indiana Jones.
I know you
like
do.
Indy, one of my favourites. He's a good man. He's a decent man, Indy. Or if I was forced to go and see Barbie, I haven't seen it yet, but let's just say I didn't like it, I might give it a 4.
I think it'd be right up your street. I think you'd love it.
I might. I probably will go and see it. I mean, my daughter wanted to see it, but apparently it's meant to be not like a Barbie film. It's meant to be a bit dark.
No.
Dark Barbie. Derby.
No, I don't think it's for a 7-year-old. I think that's probably inappropriate parenting.
And well, yeah, I know that.
I know. Good job, you know. See?
5 stars again because he's a good dad.
I'll give you that. That's about the one thing I'll give you.
Well, at least some woman. I know there's one woman out there who'd give me 5 stars. A little woman. My little daughter.
Your little daughter, exactly.
Now, I think that therein lies the problem. You know, it's like I chose to see Indiana Jones, but I was given Barbie. So if you're reviewing something when you don't have a choice, it's very, very different. And I think that if you're reviewing something you don't have a choice, but you frame that review within the context of not having a choice, we have to consider it within the context of how those reviews are being given. Let's end on this one. What review would you give yourself as a social worker? And then next, I'm going to give you a review.
Oh, God.
And I don't know you as a social worker, but I'm going to... Well, I know you, and I know you are a social worker, but I've never witnessed you...
No, you haven't. No.
In full flight, like a horse galloping across the field. I've only seen you in the livery yard.
Right, okay.
I haven't seen you canter.
Right.
Gallop? Would you canter? Gallop? Would you
Stop interrupting!
Would you describe your social work style as a canter, a gallop, or a trot? What else
I'm
can
not
horses
answering
do?
that
What can they
question.
do? Horses can canter, gallop, trot,
walk.
What's the difference between a walk and a trot? What's faster?
Trot.
What's the slowest movement a horse can do?
Walk.
So it can walk. What's the next one?
Trot.
Walk, trot,
canter, gallop.
So there's 4. How would you what is your general approach to social work? Do you walk in social work? Do you trot? Do you canter or gallop?
I'm quite a walker. I'm a laid back.
I'm a trotter. Like Del Boy. I'm like Del Boy. I'd be like Rodney, wouldn't I? I'd be the Rodney. You'd be Grandad.
Yeah.
You'd be Uncle Albert. That's who you'd be.
Okay, right. No, I'm quite a laid back social worker.
You're a walker.
I like to go in and be the calming presence. I think people get very heightened very easily. We're working in high crisis situations, a lot of tension, emotion. So I like to go in and just bring everything down.
So I'm saying the review now. I'm manifesting it. The review is going to be, the title of the review is going to be Tilly the Trotter. Tilly the Trotter. You have given yourself a review. What would you say were your good qualities?
Oh, no, this is really hard. This is people find this, well, I certainly find it really uncomfortable to talk about the positive. I could talk all day about things that I don't do right.
Write a negative review about yourself then. You're angry. You're inflamed. You've just been into a restaurant and you've had lukewarm soup and there was a fly in your baguette. Oh, Imagine you in that mindset. I'm going to leave a bad review about myself. You've been wronged by you. You've wronged yourself.
Well, it's normally because I end up making people cry because I have to be very honest in my assessments, and so most of the assessments I do are deprivation of liberty safeguard assessments. So
Tilly deprived my liberty. Would that be the headline?
My liberty.
Tilly deprived my liberty.
And it's on a serious note, it's a very uncomfortable topic to be talking about with people because you're taking away their freedoms, but you're safeguarding their rights whilst you're doing this because you're making sure that it's right, necessary, proportionate, in their best interest. But to hear that news sometimes when you say, look, actually you're not safe living on your own, you're in hospital because we can't let you go home yet, or you're in a care home because your partner can't cope with you anymore, or you've been out and about and you've got yourself into a lot of problems. That's a really difficult thing to hear, but you have to be honest because that's the whole point. When you're assessing someone's capacity to make a decision, you've got to give them all the relevant information, and that can be really hard to hear. So I unfortunately often end up making people get very upset and emotional. That's not about you though, is it? That's the thing. So that's not your qualities, because anyone would have to do that. Yeah, so and actually the people that then don't make them upset is probably they're not giving them the right information. Exactly. Yeah. And you know, it's how we deliver bad information. It's not the fact that we can avoid giving people bad information if it is the right thing. And it is the right thing many times. It's how we do that. So, what qualities do you bring to that then? What are your qualities? You've got to do that regardless. So any reviews regarding that, just like complaints, sometimes we get, a lot of the complaints we get in the social work are simply for social workers doing their jobs well. Yeah. Well done, they've done the job well. What qualities do you bring that you think make you better at having to do those difficult tasks? I think it comes back to empathy and compassion. Empathy. And just being able to sit there and hold that safe space for someone and be kind about how you deliver that news. Mm-hmm. And I think it kind of goes back to bedside manner. It's what sometimes our health professionals can sometimes lack in. But having those people skills, being able to build those relationships and putting someone at ease, and even if they're getting upset and you're having to talk about those really difficult conversations, being able to support them and hold that conversation safely. Yeah. I like it. What about you then? Yes, I was just thinking then about the feedback that I get most often. Clients that I work with appreciate my honesty. I'm always straight. I tell people right from the start, look, this is the assessment. These are the 3 likely outcomes that could potentially happen. This is what the law says about the situation. This is your rights. This is who you should speak to. If you've got issues regarding the assessment, speak to me. If you've got issues regarding the general day-to-day care needs of your children, speak to the social worker. If you've got any concerns regarding the legal side of things, speak to your barrister or solicitor. If you've got any concerns regarding the child's representation within proceedings, speak to the children's guardian, because most of the assessments that I'm instructing on as an independent social worker tend to come when they're already in court proceedings. Yeah. And I'm just very straight up with people. What I do as well that people tend to reflect well upon is I will look for the good as best as I can. I will always look for the good in people. And there is always good. There's always good. Yeah. And I think if I've got to say a lot of social work assessments that I read, if they are a negative assessment, the whole assessment will be almost predicated upon trying to build the case for a negative outcome. And you can see a slightly negative stance being put on everything. It's as if the analysis and outcomes have been written before the assessment. And I get that that's in people's minds. Of course it's in your mind, because if you've done the whole work and there's some things which are simply irredeemable, there's no other choice but to deliver a negative assessment. But what I do is I make sure that my assessments are fair and balanced as much as possible, because everybody has good in them and you've got to see that. And then what I found by doing that is when you get to the cross-examination stage, when you're in court and your assessment's being cross-examined,
any good points that are passed out, a parent's barrister might rightly say, well, Mr. P, do you believe that this parent loves the child? Well, of course, I put it in my assessment.
Yeah.
Do you think they were doing well until this point? Yes, I put it in my assessment. And I always think that if you can, my assessment's really long, some of them is about 16,000 pages, 16,000 words.
16,000 pages.
16,000 words are usually about 100 pages or so for the assessments. But I believe in, when you're in a position when you're making the determination and giving a view on where a child should spend their entire lives, you shape somebody's entire life. And I think the gravity that comes with that, this is why I have incredibly high standards for the work that I do, because if you cannot apply the highest of standards and the most robust of standards to writing a report which will ultimately determine or potentially very significantly determine the outcome of a child's entire life, then you are in the wrong job entirely. If you're trying to breeze through that and rush it through quickly on a Friday afternoon, you're in the wrong job entirely. So that's probably the feedback that I get most often is I'm very fair with people, I'm very just with people, I'm very straight up, and I always deal with people as human beings. Touch wood, I've never once had anyone be aggressive or shout at me or swear at me. And I quite often go into homes where, I'm instructed because a relationship between a client and the social worker is entirely broken down. There's no other option but to instruct an independent social worker.
Yeah.
And immediately I'm a social worker. And if people don't like social workers, they inevitably don't like me as well. And that's fair enough. You know that you're starting from 5 steps back. You've immediately got to get those 5 steps forward just to establish a normal base of congruence. And again, this is why having a person-centered approach and having that grounding in counselling massively helps, because if you can always look into people and see the best, and I always have this frame of mind. There's 2 mantras which I have more than any other, which I always put in my mind. And I quite often find myself saying it to myself in my head. There but for the grace of God go I.
Yeah.
If I'd have experienced the adverse childhood experience that that person had experienced, well, I'd have probably been in a worse position. I often look at the people I'm thinking, how are you here? I'm not as strong as you. There might be in very low moments, but I'm thinking, well, you're still fighting, you're still talking to me, you're still wanting your kids back. Brilliant.
Yeah.
It's better than I could do. And I also think good people do bad things.
Yes.
And I think if you come from the basis of good people do bad things, then you're not going to go far wrong. No. And then you can put that in your assessment. You can put that in your assessment report. When somebody's reading that report, even if it's negative, I like them to think, well, actually, that's fair. Because they haven't just built an agenda. There wasn't a rush to turn everything bad to try and strengthen the argument for, an outcome where the children can never return to my care. They are looking at the positives. And equally, if it's a positive assessment, well, I reflect on the negatives as well, because obviously there's going to be negatives, because they wouldn't have ended up in that situation without been bad things. And, they'll be, well, actually, these are negatives, but I think they are not as significant as they were. I think they'll be managed by these interventions. You can put together a learning plan. And that's the approach I take. And I think even if I got negative reviews, I wouldn't argue with them, because I know that I'd done my best, and those negative reviews were probably things that I couldn't change, because it would be the outcome, not the process.
Couldn't say it better myself.
We'll end on that note, listeners. As always, thank you ever so much for tuning in or watching us, as it will be on this week. We will be back next week with who knows what. Until then, it would be much appreciated if you could. We've reviewed ourselves, now you review us. If you head over to iTunes or Spotify or anywhere else you get your podcasts, or even leave a comment or give it a thumbs up or subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, that will be most appreciated, and we will read it out on next week's show. As always, you can check out the content that we've been discussing on mysocialworknews.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn by also looking for Social Work News. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.